Cop speaks false charges against a black woman, and she responds by showing her federal ID. The first lie landed like a punch. She doesn't belong in this courtroom, Officer Mark Hale said, voice raised just enough to echo off the wood-paneled walls. She's aggressive, unstable, and a clear threat to public safety. Every head turned. Row by row, the quiet hum of the county courthouse died. The ceiling fans kept spinning. The fluorescent lights kept buzzing, but the air changed thicker, heavier, charged. At the defense table, a black woman in a simple charcoal dress sat perfectly still. Amara Lewis didn't flinch. No designer bag, no flashy jewelry. Her hair was pulled back into a low, neat bun. A thin notebook rested in front of her, pen aligned with military precision. To anyone else in that room, she looked like just another defendant who'd pushed her luck too far. To Officer Hale, that made his job easier. He stood on the witness stand in a neatly pressed uniform, one hand gripping the wooden rail, the other hovering near his badge like it was part of his body. His jaw was set, his expression a practiced blend of concern and authority. "Describe the incident, Officer Hale," the prosecutor said, not looking up from her notes. Haley didn't miss a beat. She refused every lawful command, he said, raised her voice, blocked the entrance to the building. "When I attempted to de-escalate, she stepped toward me, fists clenched. I believed she might attack me or flee the scene." A murmur rippled from the back row. Somewhere, a chair creaked. A pen stopped moving. The judge, an older white man with a tired face and an immaculate robe, adjusted his glasses and peered over at Amara as if seeing her for the first time. Amara met his gaze, calm, steady, unblinking. Inside, her heartbeat didn't even change tempo. This was not the first time a room full of strangers had been invited to fear her. Before we go deeper into this story, the narrator's voice slides in steady, intimate, like someone sitting right next to you. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change, and we're glad you're here. Now, back to Amara Lewis. Hale kept going, building his story brick by brick. "She refused to provide ID," he said. Her tone was hostile. She said, and I quote, "You don't get to question me. I feared for my safety and for the safety of others nearby." He glanced toward the jury box, just long enough for them to feel the weight of his stare. One juror shifted, another folded her arms, another scribbled something down, lips pressed thin. The prosecutor finally glanced up, satisfied. "And at any point," she asked, "did the defendant comply with your instructions?" Hale snorted softly, playing to the room. "Not once." The word hung there, a verdict in itself. Not once. At the defense table, Amara's pen moved for the first time. One small line, a timestamp, a single word. Lied. She didn't look at him. She didn't interrupt. She let the performance run. Because that's what it was, a performance. And she was not the audience. She was the investigation. 3 rows back, a young intern in an ill-fitting suit, Daniel Ortiz, watched with growing confusion. He'd been there that night, had stood 5 feet away when the incident unfolded. His memory did not match what was being served to the court like a polished script. He remembered a woman who had spoken calmly. Hands visible, voice even, words measured. Now, hearing Hale talk, he felt like he was watching a movie based on a true story, except someone had decided the truth wasn't dramatic enough. The judge cleared his throat. "Miss Lewis," he said slowly, "do you have anything to say about Officer Hale's account of events?" The whole room shifted toward her, as if pulled by an invisible current. Amara lifted her eyes from the notebook. Her gaze moved from the judge to the prosecutor, then to Hale. Not hurried, not nervous, just deliberate. She opened her mouth, and then she did something no one expected. She closed it again. "No, Your Honor," she said quietly. "Not yet." The prosecutor's eyebrow twitched. "Your Honor, for the record, the defendant has had..." The judge held up a hand. "She's entitled to remain silent at this stage, counselor." Silent. That word seemed to relax some people and agitate others. In the second row, a woman whispered, "See? Guilty." In the back, a man muttered, "If she didn't do it, why wouldn't she defend herself?" Amara heard all of it. Every whisper. Every assumption. She had heard it before. At 19, she'd stood in another courthouse, on another day when a different officer used the same tone, the same words, hostile, uncooperative, threatening. Back then, she hadn't had the tools. No badge, no authority, just the truth and a voice no one wanted to hear. Today was different. Today, she wasn't here to prove she was innocent. She was here to prove he was lying. Officer Hale leaned into the microphone, unable to let go of the moment. "If I hadn't been there," he added, voice low and deadly serious, "someone could have gotten hurt, maybe worse." He let the implication hang in the room like smoke. The prosecutor nodded gratefully. "No further questions, Your Honor." The judge turned toward the defense table. "Miss Lewis, do you wish to cross-examine the witness?" Amara's fingers brushed the edge of her notebook, tapping once, a quiet signal to herself. Not yet. She rose slowly, the legs of her chair scraping softly against the floor. The room watched as she stood, a slim black woman with calm eyes and no visible armor. "No, Your Honor," she repeated. "I'm satisfied for now." The judge frowned, caught between procedure and curiosity. Hale smirked, sure he'd just won another round. From the gallery, Daniel Ortiz stared, something twisting inside his chest. This felt wrong, scripted, stacked. He looked at Amara again. She wasn't scared. She looked patient, as if everyone else was racing toward a conclusion while she was waiting for something else, something bigger to arrive. The court clerk called the next procedural step, her voice a distant hum. Amara sat down, folded her hands on her notebook, and exhaled once. On the front page, in precise handwriting, a single line stared back at her. Officer Hale under oath. Every lie recorded. She didn't need to fight his story in the middle of his performance, because when the curtain finally dropped, it wouldn't be her reputation on trial. It would be his badge. The courthouse hallway hummed like a distant engine as the bailiff called a short recess. People rose from their seats, stretching stiff backs, stepping aside to whisper theories about what they had just seen. Officer Hale walked off the stand with the swagger of someone who believed the room belonged to him. His boots landed hard, loud, almost triumphant. Amara didn't move. She remained at the table, palms resting on the closed notebook, her breathing slow and steady. From a distance, she looked like someone trying to collect herself. But up close, if anyone had bothered to look, there was not a hint of panic on her face. Only calculation, only patience. The kind of patience that made powerful men nervous. A young woman sitting behind her, a mother in a faded denim jacket, leaned toward her husband. "She looks too calm," she whispered. "If I were her, I'd be shaking." Her husband nodded without looking up. Maybe she's used to this. Amara heard that. She hears everything. And for a moment, her gaze softened not from emotion, but from recognition. They weren't wrong. She was used to it. More than they could ever guess. She opened her notebook again. Page after page was filled with compact handwriting, timestamps, short-coded phrases she'd trained herself to use over the years. HX tone escalates. False command claim. Microaggression #2. Behavioral pattern repeated. Not a diary. Not a defense. A log, the kind federal investigators submit during high-risk evaluation cases. None of them knew they were sitting 10 feet away from the person who had been assigned to secretly evaluate Officer Hale's conduct for the last 6 weeks. None of them knew she had the authority to escalate a case past internal affairs in a single call. None of them knew she had already done it once quietly, efficiently to an officer in Chicago 3 years earlier. But Amara wasn't thinking about that officer now. She was thinking about something older, something buried. A memory slid through her mind like fog on cold glass. 14 years old, standing in a strip mall parking lot with a bottle of iced tea in one hand, the cruiser lights suddenly blue as the sky behind her. The officer stepping out, hand on holster, voice sharp. "Stop right there, don't move." She had frozen. She had listened. She had complied. And still he'd said she lunged. Still he'd written she was agitated. Quote. Still he'd insisted she posed a threat. She had cried into her pillow that night, not because of the accusation, but because of the question her mother asked when tucking her in. Baby, why do they always assume the worst? Amara didn't have the answer then. She has it now, and she intends to deliver it. A shadow drifted over the edge of her table. She looked up. Daniel Ortiz, the nervous intern from the gallery, stood a few feet away, shifting his weight from one shoe to the other. He opened his mouth as if to speak, then shut it again. "Yes?" Amara said gently. He blinked, startled that she'd noticed him. Sorry, ma'am, I wanted to say I'm not sure what he said up there was accurate." His voice cracked on the last word. Amara tilted her head. "You were there?" Daniel nodded. "Yes. And you didn't," he swallowed. "You didn't do anything he said." Their eyes met. For a moment, Amara saw something she didn't expect. Guilt. Heavy, unwelcome, choking guilt. "You don't have to speak now," she told him softly. Daniel's shoulders sagged in relief. I want to. I just don't know if I'm allowed." "You're allowed to tell the truth," she said. "No one owns that." He looked down, nodding slowly, then walked away, shaking his hands as though trying to drain fear from his fingertips. Across the room, Officer Hale watched the exchange. His jaw tightened, his nostrils flared. Something animal flickered behind his eyes. He didn't like losing control of the narrative, especially not to a woman he had worked so hard to paint as unstable. He stepped toward her table, his voice dropping to a low hiss meant only for her. "Whatever you think you're doing, it won't work." Amara didn't look at him. She finished writing a note, closed her pen with a soft click, and only then lifted her face. "I'm not thinking," she said calmly. "I'm observing." Hale smirked. "You're not walking out of here clean." Quote, "I already am," she replied. Confusion flickered across his features, then darkened into anger. He took a step closer, too close before a bailiff moved in between them. "Back to your seat, officer." Hale bristled but obeyed. Amara turned back to her notes as though nothing had happened. People began retaking their seats. The judge re-entered. The gavel tapped once, sharp, slicing the whispers in the room. "Court will resume," he said. The prosecutor straightened her blazer. Hale lifted his chin. Daniel sat rigidly, fingers gripping the bench. And Amara closed her notebook one final time. She had seen enough. She had heard enough. And now, she was done waiting. Her silence wasn't weakness. It was a countdown. And the moment she opened her mouth, the truth would hit this courtroom like a seismic wave. Officer Hale took the stand again with the certainty of a man who had never been questioned by anyone who mattered. The prosecutor adjusted her papers, nodded once, and the performance resumed. The gallery leaned forward as though the room itself expected the next lie. "Let me be clear," Hale said, voice booming with authority he didn't deserve. "This woman was unpredictable, confrontational, and refused every directive I gave. I repeated myself multiple times. She wasn't confused. She was intentionally defiant." A few jurors nodded unconsciously, falling into the gravity of his confidence. Authority has a sound loud, rehearsed, unquestioned, and Hale wielded it like a weapon. The prosecutor stepped closer. "Did you fear escalation?" "I did," Hale replied without hesitation. "If I hadn't intervened, someone could have been hurt, possibly worse." Another ripple of whispers stirred through the gallery. The phrase "possibly worse" was deliberate, crafted to plant seeds of danger, seeds that bloom fast in rooms like this. On the defense bench, Amara's fingers rested on her notebook, unmoving. Her eyes didn't track Hale. They tracked the room who shifted, who reacted, who hardened. She could feel the atmosphere tightening, tension coiling around the rails of the courtroom like a living thing. And not a single person suspected she had orchestrated this environment for weeks. Hale wasn't just lying today. He had been lying for years. The courtroom didn't know that, but she did. A soft click echoed as Amara turned to a new page in her notebook. The sound was tiny, yet it sliced through Hale's testimony like a scalpel. His voice stuttered for half a second, barely noticeable, but she caught it. He was starting to feel watched. "Good. Officer Hale," the judge said, rubbing at his temple, "your statements describe an unusual level of aggression. Was this behavior consistent from the moment you made contact with Miss Lewis?" "Yes, Your Honor. She gave resistance from the very first minute." Amara's pen didn't move, but her eyes did upward briefly. The first minute, that was the crack, because the body cam timestamp told a different story. 3 rows back, Daniel Ortiz felt his pulse thudding behind his ears. He remembered that first minute. He remembered it vividly because nothing had happened. Nothing. She had answered Hale calmly. She had shown her hands. She had waited, and Hale had framed it as defiance. Daniel's chest tightened. His nails dug into his palm. Should he speak? Should he stand? Should he interrupt? His throat tried to close. He'd seen officers lie before. He'd just never seen them do it under oath. So boldly, so completely, so confidently. It frightened him how easy it was. The prosecutor circled the witness stand like a shark scenting blood. "Officer Hale!" Did she raise her voice? Yes. Did she step toward you? Yes. Quote, did she make any gestures that suggested hostility? Yes. Each yes landed like a stone tossed into deep water, clean, heavy, irreversible. The jurors took notes. The gallery shifted. A woman clutched her purse a little closer. And all the while, Amara sat silent, not cowed, not cornered, waiting. The prosecutor closed her notebook with a snap. No further questions. The judge looked to the defense table. Miss Lewis, cross-examination? Amara stood slowly. The room leaned in. Every footstep she took toward the witness stand was precise, measured, steady. Her heels clicked softly against the floor, a metronome of impending truth. Hale's smirk returned, thin and crooked, like a mask he'd worn 1,000 times. "Ready to try your story, sweetheart?" he muttered under his breath. Amara heard him. She let it pass. For now, she reached the stand but didn't face Hale. Instead, she addressed the judge. "No questions at this time, Your Honor." Quote. A full second of shock rippled through the room. Even the judge blinked. "Are you sure?" "Yes." Amara gave a small nod. "I have what I need." Hale's smirk faltered. Daniel inhaled sharply. The prosecutor frowned, sensing something slipping, something she couldn't name. Amara returned to her seat and opened her notebook once more. This time, she wrote only one sentence. "He has perjured himself 3 times. Truth will break him." Across the aisle, a man in a gray suit whispered to his wife, if she was really innocent, she'd fight back. Amara's gaze flicked toward him just briefly, just enough. Not anger, not intimidation, a reminder. People only understand battles they've fought, and she had fought this one her entire life. Her silence was not surrender. It was strategy. Officer Hale shifted in his seat, restless, suddenly unsure of his footing. The prosecutor tried to refocus him, but his confidence had developed a wobble. He kept glancing toward Amara as though her quiet was louder than any accusation. Because it was. Her calm was pressure. Her stillness was a countdown. Her silence was proof she didn't fear him at all. He felt it. Everyone felt it. And somewhere deep inside Hale's chest, buried under layers of arrogance, a small, uneasy truth began to surface. He wasn't in control anymore. The room didn't know it yet, but it soon would. Because the higher tension climbs, the harder it falls. And Amara was done letting him climb. The courtroom felt different now, like the air had thickened, like the walls were leaning closer, listening. Even the hum of the overhead lights seemed sharper, as though the building itself sensed something shifting. The judge shuffled papers. The prosecutor whispered to her assistant. Officer Hale sat stiffly, jaw clenched, hands folded too tightly in his lap. Each of them believed the recess was an intermission. For Amara, it was a fuse. Daniel Ortiz knew it too, though he didn't know how he knew. He sat in the second row, knees bouncing, fingers tapping a frantic rhythm against his thigh. His mind replayed the incident like a broken projector. Amara's calm hands, Hale's raised voice, the way nothing matched what was being said under oath. He swallowed hard. He wasn't supposed to be here. Interns weren't required at hearings like this. He had only come because something about Hale's report had gnawed at him ever since he'd filed his observational notes. Something wrong. Something off. And now he listened to lie after lie laid down like brickwork, building a wall tall enough to bury a woman who had done nothing wrong. Court is now back in session, the bailiff announced. People rose, then settled again. The judge looked as tired as the morning sun streaming through the high windows. Next witness, please. Quote. The prosecutor stood. Your Honor, the state would like to call, but before she could finish, a voice broke through the courtroom. I'd like to speak. It wasn't loud. It wasn't polished. But it was clear enough to stop the room. Every head turned. Daniel stood. His tie was crooked, his shirt slightly wrinkled, his palms visibly sweating. He looked like someone who'd never raised his voice in a courtroom before and never planned to. But fear held only half his expression. The other half was resolve. The prosecutor stiffened. Your Honor, this is highly irregular. The judge lifted a hand. Identify yourself. Daniel cleared his throat. Daniel Ortiz, intern with the Ridgeview Police Department, assigned to Officer Hale during his patrol rotation. Hale's eyes sharpened, predator-like. Not fear. Warning. Daniel felt it, but he didn't sit. I was present during the incident involving Miss Lewis, he said, and her behavior was nothing like what was described. A hush swept the room, a soft gasp rippling through the gallery. The prosecutor snapped, Mr. Ortiz, you are not on the list of witnesses. I know, Daniel said, voice cracking, but I need to say this. The judge leaned forward. What exactly did you observe? Daniel twisted his fingers together. She complied with every instruction. She spoke calmly. She didn't step toward Officer Hale. She didn't raise her voice. She wasn't even upset. Each sentence landed like a blow. Hale shook his head slowly, forcing out a low laugh. Kid, don't do this. You must not have been paying attention. Daniel's breath hitched. Memories surged back the way Hale had shoved the door open, the way he'd puffed his chest, the way he'd spoken to Amara like she had already committed a crime simply by standing there. No, Daniel said, stronger this time. I was paying attention, and she didn't do what you're accusing her of. Quote. Someone in the back whispered, "Oh, damn." The judge's eyes narrowed at Hale. "Officer, is this true?" Hale's jaw flexed. The intern is confused. But Daniel wasn't done. "There's more," he said. His voice trembled, but his stance did not. Her tone never escalated. He was the one who raised his voice. He accused her of resisting when she didn't move. He acted like she was a threat before she even spoke. A few jurors exchanged glances. Amara sat very still. She didn't intervene. She didn't smile. She simply watched a young man choose truth over comfort. Something rare, something costly. Hale leaned forward, venom softening his words. "Sit down, Ortiz. You don't know what you're doing." Daniel hesitated, and for a moment fear won. His shoulders dipped. His eyes fell. Then he looked at Amara. She didn't nod. She didn't encourage. She didn't speak. But something in her gaze, steady, warm, unbroken, did what courage sometimes needs. It reminded him he wasn't crazy, he wasn't overreacting, he wasn't imagining the wrongness of what he had witnessed. Daniel lifted his chin. "What I'm doing," he said quietly, "is telling the truth." The room inhaled collectively. The judge tapped his pen thoughtfully. "Mr. Ortiz, please step forward." Daniel walked, legs shaking but steps unwavering. As he stood before the bench, the judge studied him like someone examining the first honest thing they'd heard all day. Then he turned to Hale. "Officer, this testimony contradicts your sworn statement." Hale's eyes flashed fury, quick, sharp, dangerous. "It's a misunderstanding," he said through clenched teeth. But for the first time, his voice didn't ring with certainty. For the first time, doubt sat beside him on the witness stand. The judge leaned back. "We will continue, but the court will note the discrepancy." Daniel exhaled shakily. His hands trembled at his sides, but he did not regret speaking. Not for a second. As he stepped away, Amara whispered, not loudly, not for the room, only for him, "Thank you." Daniel nearly froze. Gratitude wasn't what he expected. Validation wasn't what he expected. But it settled something heavy inside him. He returned to his seat, and the courtroom shifted again quietly, subtly, but undeniably. For the first time, Officer Hale wasn't the unquestioned authority. For the first time, someone had stepped into the light on Amara's side, and everyone felt it. The wall of lies Hale built was starting to crack, and Amara hadn't even begun speaking yet. She closed her notebook. She didn't smile, but her eyes told the truth. The storm had found its first lightning strike. The prosecutor's voice droned on, but no one in the courtroom was listening anymore. Not really. Something electric had entered the air. Something sharp, alive, unpredictable. It felt like standing in a room moments before lightning hits metal. Officer Hale felt it too. His confidence, the swagger that carried him through every word of his testimony, had thinned, stretched tight as an old rope. He kept shifting in his seat, repositioning his shoulders, cracking his knuckles. Every movement was a tell, and Amara watched all of them. Because liars don't break in silence. They break in motion, and Hale was moving too much. The prosecutor finished a line of questioning, then turned toward the defense table. "Your witness," she said dismissively. Amara didn't stand. Instead, she closed her notebook slowly, deliberately. That small act, quiet, controlled, agitated Hale more than any cross-examination could have. He rose from his chair abruptly, fists curled. "Your Honor, I object to this behavior. She's trying to intimidate me." The judge blinked. "She's sitting. She's making a mockery of this courtroom," Hale snapped, jabbing a finger at her. "Look at her. She's smug. She's manipulating the process." Amara lifted her gaze, calm as still water. That alone enraged him. Hale slammed a hand on the witness stand railing. The loud crack echoed through the courtroom like a gunshot. Gasps erupted. A woman in the gallery flinched. The judge leaned back, startled. "Officer Hale," the judge warned, "control yourself." But he didn't. Couldn't. He pointed directly at Amara, arm rigid, face flushed, composure gone. "She's dangerous. She should have been restrained from the start." Those words did it. A bailiff moved forward, hand hovering near Amara as though she were suddenly a threat. A few jurors drew back. Someone murmured, "Maybe she's hiding something." Amara didn't move, didn't blink. But inside her chest, something old and familiar cracked open. A memory surged forward, unexpected, uninvited. She was 17, standing in a convenience store wearing her blue community college hoodie, holding a bottle of peach iced tea she hadn't even opened. The clerk had accused her of stealing. No reason, no missing items. Just his eyes landing on her, deciding she was the kind who takes things. Officer at the scene never asked her a single question. He asked the clerk. He asked the two white customers standing nearby. He asked his partner, but he never asked her. When she tried to speak, he raised his hand, palm outward, like she was a dog jumping at him. Back up, don't escalate it. She never forgot that phrase, don't escalate it. She remembered how her throat locked, how her hands trembled, how the officer wrote in his report that she was agitated and evasive because she asked why she was being detained. That was the night she learned silence was safer than truth. But today was not 17. And this courtroom was not that store, and she was not the girl with trembling hands. Amara inhaled once steady, grounding, and the memory slid back into its cage. She stood. A simple action, a quiet action, but it changed the temperature of the room instantly. Even Hale sensed it. He stepped back as though someone had pushed him. "Your Honor," he stammered, she's trying to—" "To what?" the judge asked. His tone had hardened. "Stand?" Hale's mouth opened, but no sound came out. The judge motioned to the bailiff. "Do not approach Miss Lewis unless instructed." Then to Hale, "And you will refrain from aggressive gestures in my courtroom." "But she—" "Enough." The gavel cracked. Silence fell, the good kind. The kind that rearranges a room. Amara walked slowly toward the center aisle, not running, not reacting, just moving with the quiet precision of someone reclaiming space that had been taken from her too many times. She stopped in front of the witness stand, hands loose at her sides. "Officer Hale," she said evenly, "you accused me of aggression." He scoffed. "You were aggressive. You accused me of stepping toward you." "You did. You accused me of raising my voice." "You did!" Her voice dropped lower. "Then why are you the one yelling now?" A hush ripped through the courtroom. Even the judge looked stunned. Hale's face twisted anger, fear, confusion, all fighting for control. "Don't play games with me," he snarled, leaning forward again. But this time Amara stepped back, not out of fear, but to force the bailiff to see the dynamic clearly. It worked. "Sir?" the bailiff warned Hale. "Step away." Hale froze. Amara lifted her chin. "Your Honor, may I clarify something?" The judge nodded slowly. "In his report," she said, "Officer Hale states he feared I would escalate." Her tone didn't rise. It didn't need to. He feared escalation, even before I spoke. Somewhere in the gallery, someone whispered, "Oh, that's bad." The prosecutor shifted uncomfortably. Hale started to shake his head, but she wasn't finished. "And now," she continued softly, "after 20 minutes of sworn testimony, the only person who has displayed aggression in this courtroom is him." Quote. This time, the judge didn't hide his reaction. He looked at Hale, the uniform, the badge, the clenched fists, and something clicked behind his eyes. Something heavy, something overdue. Amara broke her gaze from Hale and turned back toward her table. She wasn't gloating. She wasn't triumphant. She was simply resetting the narrative to where it always should have been. But as she sat down, one thought pulsed through the room like a heartbeat shared by everyone watching. If this was the breaking point, what happens when she finally decides to fight back? The courtroom had gone unnervingly still, like the pause between the thunder and the lightning. Everyone felt it. A tension too precise to be fear, too focused to be coincidence. Officer Hale tried to regain control. He straightened his shoulders, smoothed his uniform, forced air through his lungs. But his eyes, sharp moments ago, now darted, searching for something steady to grab onto. He found nothing, because Amara wasn't reacting the way he expected. She wasn't shaking. She wasn't angry. She wasn't even defensive. She was preparing. The judge cleared his throat. "Miss Lewis, do you wish to continue?" "Yes, Your Honor." Her voice carried with quiet weight. Not loud, not dramatic, but final. She reached into her bag not quickly, not abruptly, but with the composed precision of someone retrieving a tool they had been waiting to use. A phone. Slim, black, screen dark until her thumb brushed the glass. One tap. One single tap. No words. No theatrics. But the effect hit the room like a fuse catching fire. A soft vibration hummed through the device, followed by a quiet click in her earpiece. A voice, steady, controlled, female, came through with crisp authority. "Inspector Lewis, Internal Affairs is connected and recording. Protocol E47 is now active." The gallery didn't hear the words, but they saw the shift in Amara's expression. A subtle tightening of her jaw. A calmness sharpening into purpose. The kind of focus that doesn't come from fear or anger, only from power. Daniel Ortiz's breath caught. The prosecutor stiffened, sensing something she couldn't identify. Hale froze. "Inspector?" he echoed under his breath. What did she just say?" Amara didn't look at him. She simply folded her phone in her palm and stepped toward the lectern, addressing the judge with quiet dignity. "Your Honor," she said, "I believe it's time we clarify who exactly is being evaluated today." The judge blinked. "I don't follow." "You will," she replied. She set her notebook on the lectern. The soft thud sounded louder than Hale's earlier outburst. She opened it not to her notes, but to a paper tucked inside the front cover, a sealed document. Gold-embossed federal insignia. Signed, stamped, dated, the kind of document that changes a room. "Miss Lewis," the prosecutor said sharply, "what are you doing? This hearing concerns your conduct." "No," Amara said, turning the document around. "It concerns his." Her finger pointed not accusatory, but exact toward Hale. The judge leaned forward, squinting at the emblem. His frown deepened. "This is a federal oversight authorization." Hale laughed once short, panicked. "Fake. It has to be fake. She's making—" A voice cut through the courtroom speakers. Not Amara's, not the judge's. A firm, unmistakably official voice transmitted through the recessed audio system. "This is Deputy Director Carla Monroe, Federal Oversight Division. Documentation is verified. Inspector Lewis is operating under federal mandate. All present will maintain compliance." Quote, "The room erupted in whispers. What, she's federal? No way. Did he lie about a federal inspector? Oh, he's done." Hale stumbled back a step, hitting the railing. "What is this? What are you pulling? You're supposed to be the defendant." Amara turned, finally meeting his eyes. "I never said I was the defendant," she said quietly. "You assumed I was?" His mouth opened, then closed. Silence swallowed him. Amara flipped open her notebook. Pages filled with timestamps. Quotes, observations, patterns of misconduct. Weeks of watching him do what he did today, except this time, he did it under oath. "Your Honor," she said evenly, "per Federal Directive E-47, all testimony today has been monitored and logged." Officer Hale's statements contain multiple instances of perjury, report fabrication, and racial bias markers consistent with prior flagged interactions. The prosecutor paled. "Bias markers? Logged by who?" "Internal Affairs," Amara replied. "Live." Quote, as if on cue, her phone vibrated again. She lifted it slightly. "Inspector Lewis," Carla Monroe's voice continued. "Phase 2 confirmed. Officer Hale's previous incident reports are being cross-referenced, pattern identified. Recommend immediate custodial detainment pending review." Gasps. "Hands over mouths," someone whispered. "He's going to jail." Hale tried to speak, tried to muster the confident tone he always relied on, but the words came out strangled. "You can't do this," he rasped. You tricked me." "No," Amara said softly. "You exposed yourself." His breathing grew uneven. "You think you're better than me?" "No," she replied. "I think I'm prepared." The judge rubbed his forehead, overwhelmed. "Miss Lewis, Inspector Lewis, what exactly were you assigned to investigate?" Amara lifted her notebook. "Officer Mark Hale," she said, "his conduct, his truthfulness, his treatment of black civilians, and whether his actions demonstrate patterns of bias or abuse." Quote, every eye in the room snapped to Hale, his face drained. You set me up," he whispered. "No," she said. "You walked in and proved the investigation correct." The judge exhaled. Bailiff remained by Officer Hale. Hale flinched as the bailiff approached, hand hovering near his belt. Amara closed her notebook with a soft final snap. Her voice lowered, not threatening, not triumphant, just resolute. "This hearing was never about defending myself. It was about revealing you." Quote, Hale stared at her, breath shallow. The prosecutor sat down slowly, realization spreading across her face like a shadow. Daniel Ortiz watched with wide eyes, awe replacing fear. The gallery held its breath. And Amara, quiet, steady, unshaken, became the axis around which the entire room now turned. The storm had shifted, and now it was all pointed at Hale. The courtroom didn't breathe. Not a cough, not a shuffle, not even the creak of a wooden bench. Everyone watched Amara Lewis, no longer the silent defendant, no longer the mysterious woman at the table, but the federal inspector standing at the center of the room, holding the fate of a uniformed officer like it weighed nothing at all. Hale blinked rapidly, as if trying to force the scene into a version he could understand. You're not allowed to do this," he stammered. This isn't this, can't be real." Amara didn't answer immediately. She opened her bag again with surgical calm, pulling out a compact black wallet with a silver edge. A simple motion, a small object. But when she flipped it open, the room reacted like she'd drawn a weapon. A badge gleamed under the courtroom light's sleek metal, federal seal embossed deep and unmistakable. The ID beside it bore her photograph, her name, her clearance level. Inspector Amara Lewis, Federal Oversight Division, Department of Justice. The judge leaned forward instinctively. The prosecutor stood without realizing she'd risen. A woman in the gallery whispered, "Oh my God," and covered her mouth. Daniel Ortiz felt his chest loosen, the kind of relief that makes your eyes sting. But Hale looked like gravity had just betrayed him. Amara held the badge steady, letting its weight fill the air before she spoke. "Officer Hale," she said softly, "you lied under oath. No anger, no raised voice. Just truth sharp enough to cut bone. You fabricated events," she continued. "You falsified statements. You painted me as a threat before I opened my mouth. And while you were doing that," she turned slightly, letting the badge catch the light, "you were testifying against a federal officer performing a sanctioned investigation." Hale shook his head violently. No, that's not she's lying," he shouted, voice shrill with panic. But no one believed him now. Not after the badge, not after the voice of the deputy director echoing through the speakers, not after his own behavior had betrayed him in front of the entire room. The judge cleared his throat, voice suddenly formal, reverent, cautious. "Inspector Lewis, for clarity, you are operating under the authority of the Department of Justice?" "Yes, Your Honor." "And this badge is authentic," she finished, "and active." Hale stumbled back a step, then another. The bailiff moved closer. Amara stepped toward Hale, not aggressively, not triumphantly, just enough to force him to look her in the eyes. "You accused me of aggression," she said quietly. "You accused me of escalation. You accused me of resisting." She paused. "Now tell me, what do you call everything you've done in this courtroom today?" Hale's mouth opened, but nothing came out. He looked small, not because she made him small, but because he had spent the last 30 minutes doing that to himself. Amara continued, voice still steady. "You misjudged me the moment you saw me. You assumed I was powerless. You assumed I was alone. And you assumed no one would question your story." She tilted her head. "You were wrong on every count." The prosecutor sat down slowly, eyes wide with dawning horror. It wasn't just about Hale. This would go beyond him. This would drag policy, oversight, entire chains of command under a federal review. And Amara's presence here meant that review had already begun. Hale's voice cracked. "You tricked me." "No," she said. "I watched you, and you revealed yourself." The gallery reacted low, stunned murmurs, like a tide rising in the distance. Daniel inhaled shakily, awe settling over his features. He was witnessing something he'd only read about in ethics seminars but had never seen executed in real life. A silent audit turning into a courtroom detonation. Amara closed the badge wallet and slipped it back into her bag with deliberate calm, like a surgeon placing an instrument back on the tray. Then she faced the judge. "Your Honor, I request that my full findings be entered into the record. Additionally, I request immediate suspension of Officer Hale pending federal custody." Hale jolted. "Custody? You don't have that." He stopped when the deputy director's voice returned over the court speakers like a bell-tolling judgment. "Request granted. Federal marshals are en route." Hale's knees nearly buckled. People in the gallery gasped. One woman whispered, "This is unreal." Another murmured, "No, this is justice." Amara stepped away from Hale, allowing the silence to deepen. Then she looked at him one last time. "You asked the court to believe I was violent," she said quietly. "But today, the only thing that hurt you was your own truth." Quote. Hale sank into his chair, defeated, trembling, the badge on his chest suddenly looking like a lie he could no longer carry. And Amara, calm, controlled, unshaken, became the center of gravity in the room. The moment wasn't loud, not explosive, not chaotic. It was precise, clean, undeniable. And it marked the exact second the courtroom understood. They had never been watching a defendant. They had been watching a reckoning. No one knew where to look first. Some stared at the badge. Some stared at Amara. Most stared at Hale, his face pale, his breath shallow, his uniform suddenly too tight, too heavy, too revealing. The courtroom felt different now. Not just tense, unmasked, like the truth had finally been allowed to breathe. A distant sound echoed from the hallway, the rhythmic impact of boots against marble. Not rushed, not panicked, coordinated, purposeful. Federal marshals, someone whispered. They're here already? Someone else murmured. That was fast. But Amara didn't turn. She didn't need to. She knew the sound of their approach like she knew the rhythm of her own heartbeat. The judge cleared his throat, shaken but composed. Officer Hale, you are now under federal review. You are ordered to remain seated until— No! Hale exploded, shooting to his feet. I won't let you ruin me. You think you can just walk in here and flip the whole system on me? You think you're above the law? Amara looked at him with an expression that wasn't anger, wasn't pity, just clarity. I don't think I'm above the law, she said softly. I enforce it. The room swallowed the line like scripture. Hale's breath grew jagged. He looked around frantically as though searching for anyone who still believed him. Eyes darted to the prosecutor, but she quickly looked away. Then to the judge, but the judge was stone. Even the bailiff stepped slightly closer to Amara, not Hale. For the first time, he was the threat in the room, and everyone had finally seen it. The doors to the courtroom opened. 2 U.S. Marshals entered dark suits, badges displayed, authority radiating from every controlled movement. They didn't need to announce themselves. Their presence was announcement enough. Hale stumbled backward until he hit the railing with a dull thud. This is insane, he gasped. I'm the officer here. The lead marshal stepped forward. Not today. Hale pointed wildly at Amara. She set me up. She twisted everything. No, Amara replied. You did that all on your own. The marshal nodded as though confirming a fact already written in a file somewhere. Officer Mark Hale, you are being taken into federal custody on suspicion of perjury, falsification of incident reports, misconduct, and obstruction of a federal investigation. Crew. I didn't know she was federal, Hale cried, desperation strangling his voice. You weren't supposed to know, Amara said. The bailiff took a careful step sideways, creating a clear path between the marshals and Hale. The marshals approached with calm efficiency, no shouting, no drama, just the quiet inevitability of consequences catching up. Hale's knees buckled before they reached him, and he fell into the chair behind him. The marshal pulled his hands behind his back with professional precision. The clink of handcuffs snapped through the courtroom like the final line of a verdict. Daniel Ortiz inhaled sharply. He'd seen cuffs placed on people before many times, but this was the first time it felt like justice instead of punishment. Hale sagged forward as if the weight of the metal had pulled every lie out of him. This isn't happening, he whispered. I built a whole career. I protected people. I've served 20 years. Then you should have known better, Amara said. It wasn't cruel. It was simply true. The prosecutor sank slowly into her chair, face pale. She would need to answer questions about why she supported Hale so aggressively, whether she'd ignored signs, whether she'd enabled him. She knew it. The judge knew it. Everyone did. For the first time, no one wanted to sit near her. The judge let out a long exhale. Inspector Lewis, do you have any further requests of this court? Amara stepped forward, not to the judge, not to Hale, but to the center of the room, the spot where truth had just been forced into the light. I request, she said calmly, that every report filed by Officer Hale in the last 5 years be reopened, every complaint reviewed, every civilian incident re-examined, starting today. The prosecutor looked like she'd been slapped. The judge nodded solemnly. Granted. Quote. Hale's head snapped up. 5 years? You can't do that. That'll destroy everything. It already was destroyed, Amara replied. You just hid the pieces. Hale tried to stand, but the marshals held him steady. His eyes darted once more to Amara, not with hatred, not with defiance, but with something much smaller. Fear. You don't get it, he whispered. People like you, people like me, we're supposed to stay in our lanes. Quote. Amara stepped closer, not invading his space, just closing the distance so he would hear her clearly. People like me, she said, don't have lanes, we build the roads. He had no answer. The marshals lifted him gently, guiding him toward the exit. The courtroom watched the slow march Hale's steps dragging, the hall echoing with the quiet rhythm of boots and consequences. When the doors closed behind him, the silence returned, but it wasn't tense anymore. It was clean, like the air after a storm. Amara turned back toward the judge. He gave a respectful nod, the kind given to someone who had restored order rather than disrupted it. She gathered her notebook, sliding it into her bag with movements as calm as when the day began. Daniel stood unsteady, emotional, and whispered, You saved so many people today. Amara paused, meeting his eyes for the first time. "No," she said. "I just stopped one." Then she adjusted her bag on her shoulder, lifted her chin, and walked toward the courtroom doors as the entire room watched her leave. Not as a defendant, not as a victim, not even as an inspector, but as something far rarer, a woman who made justice look effortless. The courthouse doors closed behind Amara with a soft, deliberate hush, nothing dramatic, just a breath of wood against metal. But the sound carried. It lingered. It felt like the final line of a story the building had been waiting years to hear. The hallway outside was long, polished, quiet. Sunlight spilled through the tall, arched windows, dust drifting in slow motion, turning the air gold. Amara stepped into it, her shadow stretching behind her like the remnants of a storm she'd just walked out of. People filtered out minutes later, some whispering, some stunned, some holding their phones as if they expected the moment to replay itself. They watched her, not with suspicion now, but with a dawning awareness. A woman in a burgundy blazer approached. She looked like someone who had worked in courthouses her entire life but had never seen what she saw today. "Ma'am," she said hesitantly, "I just wanted to say thank you. What you did in there, I don't think any of us will forget it." Amara offered a small nod. No fanfare, no smile for applause. "You're welcome," she said simply. Another man stepped forward, a middle-aged father holding his teenage son's backpack. "My kid," his voice cracked. "He needed to see that. He needed to see someone stand up the way you did." Amara met the boy's eyes. The kid looked away shyly, cheeks flushed. She didn't lecture him. She didn't give a speech. She only said, "Don't let anyone decide your truth before you speak it." The boy nodded, storing the sentence somewhere he would return to years later. Further down the hallway, Daniel Ortiz stood with his hands in his pockets, shoulders hunched, like he wasn't sure if he was allowed to approach. When he finally did, he did it slowly, almost cautiously, like stepping toward a moving train. "Inspector Lewis," he said, trying to sound professional but failing miserably. His voice shook not from fear now, but from everything that had just broken inside him and everything that had grown in its place. I hope I didn't overstep." Quote, "You told the truth," Amara said. "That's never overstepping." Daniel swallowed hard. "I've seen things I didn't know how to question. But today, I think I finally understood what it means to be part of the uniform." "You understood what it means to be part of justice," she corrected. "The uniform comes later." He breathed out shakily, as though something heavy had finally left him. "Thank you," he said, "for not letting him get away with it." Amara tilted her head. "He didn't lose today because of me," she said. "He lost because he believed no one would ever challenge him." Daniel nodded, emotion tightening his throat. She left him with a small pat on the arm, not reassurance, but acknowledgement. Respect for what it took to stand up when no one else would. She continued down the hall, her footsteps steady, the echoes trailing her like a second heartbeat. Outside, the sun was bright. The courthouse steps gleamed white and sharp. Reporters gathered near the bottom, microphones angled upward the second they spotted her. Questions fired like rapid sparks. "Inspector, is it true Internal Affairs was monitoring live? Will more officers be implicated? Was this investigation targeted or routine? Do you have a statement?" Amara didn't stop walking. She didn't speed up. She didn't slow down. She simply descended the steps as if gravity itself had decided to follow her lead. At the bottom, she finally turned. Dozens of cameras leaned toward her. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. "Today wasn't about taking someone down," she said, tone smooth as a blade. "It was about lifting the standard of what justice demands." The reporters fell silent, waiting. Amara continued, each word deliberate. "I didn't yell, I didn't fight, I didn't threaten, I didn't match aggression with aggression." Quote. She let the next sentence breathe before releasing it. "I didn't raise my voice, because the truth was loud enough." The line hit the crowd like a shockwave. Even the microphones seemed to lean closer. "This is not the end of anything," she said. "It's the beginning of accountability. For every badge, every rank, every title." Flashbulbs popped. One reporter asked, "Inspector, what would you say to people who feel afraid of the system?" Amara looked directly into the nearest camera, as if speaking to the people watching from their kitchens, their couches, their break rooms, their phones on lunch breaks. "Fear is real," she said, "but silence is a choice." And today, silence ended. She adjusted her bag on her shoulder. Another voice called out, "Inspector Lewis, what happens next?" Amara gave the smallest smile, the kind that said she already knew the answer but didn't owe it to anyone. "What happens next," she replied, "is exactly what should have happened all along." She turned, walking toward the waiting car at the curb. The doors opened before she reached them, her team already aware, already in motion. As Amara stepped inside, the courthouse behind her felt smaller, quieter, like it had been rewritten in real time. Not because she shouted, not because she demanded anything, but because she simply refused to be erased. The door closed with a soft click, and that was the last sound the courthouse heard as Inspector Amara Lewis left the building. Not as a victim of a lie, but as the woman who ended it. She didn't just expose a lie, she reset the balance of power, and the whole system felt it.